This man gave everything to a woman who was building a completely different life behind his back. And what he did when he found out will keep you up all night.
I gave her 6 years of my life, and she used every single one of them against me. My name is Adrian, and this is the story of the 6 years I spent loving a woman who saw me as a stepping stone. I want to tell it properly, from the beginning, because I think when you hear the whole thing, you will understand why I made the choices I made at the end, and why I have absolutely no regrets about any of them. I met Vanessa on a Wednesday evening in October. I was 26 years old and working as a junior architect at a mid-sized firm in the city. I had just moved into my first solo apartment after years of flat sharing, and I was feeling good about where my life was heading. I went to a work drinks event I almost didn't attend. Vanessa was there with a friend of a colleague. She was standing by the window, holding a glass of red wine and laughing at something someone had said. I remember thinking she had the kind of laugh that filled a room without trying to. We talked for 3 hours that night, about everything. Architecture, travel, our families, what we wanted our lives to look like in 10 years. She was a marketing consultant, sharp, ambitious, and completely sure of herself in a way I found magnetic. By the end of the night, I had her number and a coffee date for that Saturday. We were together within a month, and for the first 2 years, everything was genuinely good. I want to be clear about that, because this story is not about a relationship that was always broken. It was a relationship that worked. We traveled together. We built a life together. We had a shared language, shared jokes, shared dreams. Vanessa moved into my apartment 18 months after we got together. By year 2, we were talking about buying a place of our own. I was completely all in, and as far as I knew, so was she. The first thing I noticed that didn't quite fit was small. So small, I almost dismissed it entirely. It was a Saturday morning in our 3rd year together. Vanessa had gone for a run and left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, I was just walking past, but the email that was open on the screen stopped me. It was from a name I didn't recognize, a man named Stefan. The subject line said, "Looking forward to Thursday." I didn't read the email. I told myself it was work. I made coffee and sat down and told myself it was absolutely nothing. But something small shifted in me that morning. Not suspicion exactly, just awareness. I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. Not obsessively, not in a way that changed how I acted around her. I just noticed things. Like the fact that she started going to the gym on Thursday evenings. Vanessa had never been a gym person in 3 years together. Like the fact that she started being vague about her work schedule in a way she never had been before. Like the fact that she laughed differently sometimes when she was on her phone. A quieter laugh, almost private. I told myself I was imagining things. We had a good thing. I trusted her. I was not going to become the kind of person who checked his girlfriend's phone. So I pushed it down and focused on us. That year, I got a significant promotion at work. Lead architect on a major commercial development project. More money, more responsibility, more hours. I threw myself into it completely. Looking back, I think that was partly genuine ambition, and partly a way of quieting the part of my brain that was asking questions I didn't want to answer. Vanessa was supportive, proud even. She threw me a dinner party to celebrate the promotion, invited our closest friends, made my favorite meal. I remember sitting at the head of that table, looking at her and thinking, this is it. This is the person I am going to spend my life with. I proposed 6 months later. On a trip to Lisbon we had been planning for a year. She said yes immediately. We came home engaged and everything felt like it was exactly where it was supposed to be. We started planning the wedding within weeks. Venue, guest list, date. We set the date for 18 months away, and for a while the engagement felt like a reset. The small nagging feeling I had been carrying for a year seemed to dissolve. We were planning a future together. Everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. I just didn't know that yet. 8 months into the engagement, I had a work event on Thursday evening, a client dinner that ran late. I texted Vanessa to let her know I would be home after midnight. She replied saying she was tired and would probably be asleep. The dinner ended earlier than expected, and I was home by 10:30. The apartment was dark. I assumed she was asleep. I poured a glass of water in the kitchen and noticed her gym bag by the door. Packed, not unpacked. I stood there for a moment. Then I walked to the bedroom. She was asleep. I stood in the doorway and looked at her for a long time. Then I went back to the kitchen and sat down. I opened my laptop. I am not proud of what I did next, but I need to be honest about it. I went through 4 months of our shared credit card statements. Every Thursday evening for 4 months there were charges I hadn't noticed before. A restaurant called Kala, a wine bar called The Merchant, a hotel bar across the city. Never large amounts, always the kind of thing that could be explained away individually. But together, on the same evening every week for 4 consecutive months, they told a story. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Then I made a decision. I was not going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to find out exactly what I was dealing with first. I know some people would say I should have just asked her directly. Maybe they're right. But I had been asking myself questions for a year and telling myself I was wrong. I needed to know for certain before I said a single word. So I started being methodical about it. I noted every Thursday, every unexplained evening, every charge on the statement. 3 weeks later, I told Vanessa I had a site visit on Thursday evening that would keep me until 9. Then I left work at 5:30 and drove to the restaurant called Kala. I sat in my car across the street. At 6:47, Vanessa walked in, with a man I had never seen before. They were shown to a corner table. They sat close together. They were comfortable with each other in a way that people who are just colleagues are not. I drove home. I sat in the apartment and waited for her. She came home at 9:10. She said the gym had been busy and she had grabbed food after. I told her that sounded nice. Then I went to bed and stared at the ceiling until 3 in the morning. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I spent the day thinking. By the afternoon, I had a plan. I called a private investigator. I know that sounds extreme, but I needed documentation. I needed facts. I needed to walk into whatever conversation was coming with something concrete in my hands. The investigator was a quiet professional woman named Grace who asked me very few questions and charged a flat fee for 4 weeks of intermittent observation. 3 weeks later, she sent me a report. Stefan Reeves, 34 years old, senior partner in a PR firm. They had been seeing each other for 14 months. 14 months. 4 months before I proposed. She had said yes to my proposal while she was already 4 months into a relationship with someone else. The report included photographs, dates, locations. I read it twice. Then I put it in a folder and placed it in my desk at work. And then I did something that surprised even me. I went home that evening and acted completely normally. I made dinner, we watched a film. I kissed her goodnight. Because I needed to think about what I actually wanted to do. I had a wedding booked for 10 months away, a venue deposit paid, a shared apartment, shared finances, a life completely intertwined with a woman who had been lying to me for a year. I needed to be smart about this. I spent 2 weeks planning. First, I called my personal bank and quietly opened a new individual account. I moved my personal savings across, everything that had come in under my name alone. Then I called a property lawyer. The apartment was mine. I had bought it before we got together, and her name had never been added to the deed. I confirmed that clearly. Then I called the wedding venue. Our contract had a cancellation clause. If canceled more than 8 months before the date, the deposit was 70% refundable. We were still within that window, by 2 weeks. I documented everything I needed to document. I made every quiet move I needed to make. And then, on a Sunday morning, when Vanessa was sitting across from me eating breakfast, I slid the folder across the table. She looked at it, then looked at me. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it," I said. She opened it. I watched her face as she went through the photographs, the dates, the report. She closed the folder after 2 minutes. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Something between fear and calculation. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Long enough," I said. "Adrian, I can explain." "I know you can, but I don't want you to." I stood up and picked up my coffee. "I've already spoken to a property lawyer. The apartment is mine. I've bought it before we got together, and her name had never been added to the deed. I confirmed that clearly. Then I called the wedding venue. Our contract had a cancellation clause. If canceled more than 8 months before the date, the deposit was 70% refundable. We were still within that window, by 2 weeks. I documented everything I needed to document. I made every quiet move I needed to make. And then, on a Sunday morning, when Vanessa was sitting across from me eating breakfast, I slid the folder across the table. She looked at it, then looked at me. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it," I said. She opened it. I watched her face as she went through the photographs, the dates, the report. She closed the folder after 2 minutes. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before, something between fear and calculation. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Long enough," I said. "Adrian, I can explain." "I know you can," I said, "but I don't want you to." I stood up and picked up my coffee. I've already spoken to a property lawyer. The apartment is mine. I've already canceled the venue. I've already separated our finances. She stared at me. "I need you to be out by the end of the month," I said. "Adrian, please." "I am not angry, Vanessa," I said. "I just need you to go." And that was it. She tried 3 more times over the following days to have a conversation. I was polite every time, but I had nothing left to say. She moved out on the 28th of the month. The last thing she said to me at the door was that she was sorry and that she had genuinely loved me. I told her I believed her. Then I closed the door. I found out 6 months later through a mutual friend that Stefan had ended things with her 2 weeks after she moved out. Apparently, he had never intended for it to be serious. She called me once after that. I let it ring out. I have not spoken to her since. I want to be clear about something. I do not tell this story with bitterness. I tell it because I spent a long time blaming myself for not seeing it sooner, for not asking the questions I was afraid to ask, for proposing to someone who was already somewhere else. But the truth is, I loved her honestly, and I left her with dignity, and I rebuilt my life quietly and on my own terms. I got promoted again 8 months later. I bought a house the following year. I met someone new 18 months after Vanessa left. Her name is Priya, and she is the most straightforward person I have ever known. She says what she means. She shows up when she says she will. She has never once made me feel like I need to pay attention in that particular way. And that, more than anything, is how I know the difference now. Not between good people and bad people, but between someone who is all in and someone who is already halfway out the door. 6 years is a long time to give someone, but I gave them honestly, and I would not trade a single lesson I learned from any of it.
Follow for more.